This is Top Shop Podcast.
Shop Podcast.
Top Shop Podcast.
Podcast for automotive service business owners by Paul Donahue.
So, hey, Top Shop Podcast listeners, we got another great guest, 2 decades of experience. Mike Martin at Kerner's. Kerner's has been in Shelby Township in Michigan for since the 1970s. Yeah, you want to get in on the podcast too? All right. That's our company mascot. Yeah. So, do you have a shop dog?
We do not. No.
You not? No. Okay. Come on, Sky. Don't bother me. Come on. I'm busy. So, hey, Mike, we do appreciate your time today. Look forward to getting some great insights into, that can help some other repair shop owners out there. Can you kind of just tell us how'd you get here? So I know that you just mentioned you had purchased a shop from your father-in-law, but could you tell us about your journey to getting to being a shop owner?
Sure. So, as I think the change in the industry has been a little bit different over the last 5 or so years, as we started to see conglomerates and hedge funds buy up auto repair facilities. But back then there was essentially either somebody in the family took over, or you had a internal employee that wanted to take it over eventually. So after a couple of failed attempts at that, it was a recommendation through my wife that we take it on. And prior to this, I had a different industry altogether. I was director of labor relations for an automotive quality control company.
Oh, wow.
So I was in a different career path at the time. So, but had always worked on cars since I was in high school, and continued to work on cars even in my previous career. So it was something that something that definitely interests me. And it was a huge undertaking from the change from what I was at before, but it has worked out to our benefit.
So that's quite a change, director of labor relations. So you're working in corporate America to go from there to running a successful auto repair shop. What were your biggest challenges, do you think, making that transition?
I think in the position that I had before, we weren't dealing with the customers. The direct interaction with the customers. My customers were my employees, so there was a different relationship there. So
right.
I think that the biggest difference there was that I came into the retail side of things and was dealing with customers. The employee base was slightly different than what I was using before. Skilled trade versus professional. So different type of issues, different types of problems, but it's definitely something that we could adapt to. But I think just going into the face-to-face time with a customer was probably the biggest undertaking for myself to adjust to.
Okay. So there's did you get any kind of mentorship from anybody or?
Sure. I've been working with Elite worldwide for about 10 years now. So first couple years I worked alongside my father-in-law for a couple of years, and then after he retired, I tried to figure it out on my own, and then realized at one point it just wasn't I needed some assistance. So I've had, I've been working with the same coach with Elite for well over 10 years. So.
Okay. What is Elite Worldwide? I'm not familiar with them.
So Bob Cooper started it. He was originally with ATI, broke off with ATI really long time ago. So Bob since retired. Darren Barney took it over a couple years ago now.
Okay.
But it's a coaching program, much like
okay.
A lot of the other ones that are out there.
Sure.
They also offer training and programming for training and development for staff and service writers and the industry itself.
Okay. I mean, that's so the podcast I had earlier this morning, I asked him at the end, what was the most important thing you would say if you were talking to someone who's going to start an auto repair shop, today? And he said, get a coach.
Correct.
Would you agree? Like if you
absolutely. So
okay.
So a lot of the shop owners that I know out there that I talk to quite often are there's someone else in the business. There's a wife, there's a partner, there's someone else that they can bounce things off of. They can get advice from. They can take on problems together. and have
Right.
different viewpoints. And I didn't have that. So having a sounding board per se and the advice from a coach is definitely beneficial. And to be honest, a lot of the shop owners of independent repair facilities that are out there are technicians, and they've been working in the back of the shop for a really long time, and a lot of them continue to work in the back of the shop. So
Right.
trying to run a shop and and work in the shop can be really, really difficult. So
Right. So you're able to, since you came from a corporate world and you got a coach, you were actually able to work more on the shop than in it from the beginning.
yeah, from the beginning, no, I was in the back of the shop working on cars too and trying to figure things
Okay.
out on my own. Yeah,
Sure.
and even within the first couple of years of working with my coach, we really just concentrated on numbers and trying to put structure to and systems in place for the workforce that were here. So I had a lot of policies and procedures in place that were really all employee based, not necessarily procedural based with regards to operations. So
Mhm.
we spent a lot of time doing that and eventually recognized that the need to get out of the back of the shop to the front is what would benefit the shop the most to be able to grow the shop and develop it the way we would want to.
So, what do you think some of the core values or principles, that have contributed to your success?
Um, I I tell people that if you're looking for a shop, because every shop owner that's out there has a different business plan, a different customer base. We're not always competing against each other.
Hmm.
I've told people before to pull up reviews of the shop that you're looking at and take a look at what the customers are looking at to give you an idea, or making responses about, not necessarily the complaints, but all of the the 5 stars that people are leaving, and see what they're talking about. And I can tell you that what my customers talk about is what essentially is important to me. So if you want to know if you're looking for a particular type of shop that matches what your priorities are and what your values are, like look at those reviews and see if they match in line with what those customers are talking about. My customers are talking about the experience. Um, they're they're not they're coming to us because we can fix cars, and we can fix cars. We've been in business since '53. We know we're capable of doing it. But a lot of what customers are paying attention to now is the experience itself, and a lot of those non-tangible items that customers really pay attention to subconsciously or aware of. So my customers talk about that. They talk about that connection that they have with the service writer or somebody at the front counter, the communication that we have with them on whether that opens up those opportunities to have a relationship with the customer. Those giving customers ride homes. We offer free loaners. Like those are the things that people pay attention to and talk about. So if you think about it, they're not talking about the repair itself. They're talking about the things that matter most to them. So that's what my customer base is, and that's what's important to them is that relationship and knowing that, yes, we can fix the car and that they left it in good hands, but we're also paying attention to them and giving them the attention that they need throughout the entire process, because it's a necessary evil as far as having to repair vehicles, and
Right.
nobody really wants to be here. So how can you give it a positive spin? And one of the things that I noticed early on, and I probably carried the same stigma, was that the industry itself has this stigma that follows along with it, that we're not trustworthy, that we're trying to take advantage of people because it's an unknown. So customers just don't know what's wrong with their car, so they're trusting you to tell them what's wrong with it, and that trust factor is a big component to whether or not they do the repair itself and they believe you. So if you can
Mhm.
earn their trust, you can earn their trust. It's no longer just about how much something costs. It's whether or not we believe it's the right thing to do, and the repair itself is necessary to keep the car on the road.
That's awesome. Mike, what have you seen like in the last 5 or 10 years, as far as major changes in the auto repair industry?
So if you think about the average age of a car in an independent auto repair facility is right about 6 years old.
Hmm.
So the cars that we see on a regular basis, and we're in a very unique demographic here because we're in Detroit. So we're heavy domestic. You're probably not going to repeat this demographic anywhere else in the United States or in Canada because everyone either gets an employee discount or knows someone that can get them an employee discount. So a lot of what I work on is domestic and local.
Right.
But if you take yourself back 6 years and think about 6 years from now, we're in 2026, so 1920, and you look at the technology that was coming out in 19 and 20 or in and around that time. And I think the big change in the industry as far as technology started in 15 when we started making the push towards fuel efficiency
Mm-hmm.
and making those changes towards that. But people are keeping their cars longer. We all know that the average age of a car on the road now is 13 years old. There's multiple reasons as to why that's happening, but they're paying attention to a lot of those things that they didn't pay attention to before. Yes, 10 years ago, is everyone was making the transition to full synthetic. So we went from seeing customers 3-4 times a year to 2-2.5 times a year. So you see them less than what you did before. So as an industry, we had to change how we addressed that and what we did. So those DVIs become more important. Those inspections, that relationship with that customer, so that we can give them the honest input on what the status of their vehicle is. Because now that 6, 7, 8-year-old car now can be a 10, 11, 12-year-old car, and people want to know what it's going to take to keep it on the road. And people didn't always pay attention to preventative maintenance the way that they do now. And they're not, people weren't, 10 years ago weren't making the investment in their vehicle like they were now because it was within their wheelhouse and capabilities to just go out and get another $300 car payment. So
Right.
those just don't exist anymore
Nope.
in general. And so we're seeing the correction to the EV thing right now, especially it's more notable here in Detroit, but I think
okay.
that
I bet.
yeah. So, but as far as the losses associated with the all-in approach that everybody had, I think hybrids are here to stay. And I think they'll continue to push hybrids. And we made a decision 5 years ago to become the second EV certified independent repair facility in the state, because we saw an opportunity there. Even if we weren't going to see them every day, we wanted to have the chance to be ahead of it so that when we got those EVs that came in and trickled in, generally Teslas, that we would at least be prepared for them and have the opportunity to do the repair on them. If you think about the big push to EVs, that's all within the last 4 years. They're still going to the dealership for the most part. So we haven't seen an influx of them. Hybrids continue to come in. They've been here for a long time. So we continue to replace batteries in Priuses and repair hybrids, but those come with the same type of repairs that your traditional engine does as well. But technology has been a big push. The advanced diagnostics has been more of what we do than what we did before previously. So it's taking more time to diagnose some of these vehicles, mainly because of communication issues or because of the repair itself and the diagnosis associated with the repair. So it's not as clear cut, straightforward as it used to.
Mike, this is just conjecture, but where do you think the market's going? I mean, I think a lot of people are not buying the EV thing. They see it for what it is. It's an environmental disaster, and then 10 years later, we're going to have another disaster with the batteries. But
Sure.
I'm just curious if you got any kind of where like 10 years from now, what do you think is going to be? Where do you think
I
we're
still think the technology will continue to grow. I think the driver assist is only going to continue to get better. Hands-free driving, the self-driving cars, all that technology is already is starting to show up in some of the higher end cars, and I think you'll start to see it in a lot of the other ones. From a safety standpoint, you'll continue to see improvement in the ADAS stuff. That's going to help from a safety standpoint because of the distracted driving that is out there causing a lot of these problems. So I think that's the mode that will continue to shift towards. I think the industry, as far as the consumer base, wants to be able to make the decision on their own as to whether or not they want to go EV. So if you enhance the technology, I think, and improve those opportunities like they're trying to do now, they're going to continue to steer towards those hybrids and more fuel efficiency vehicles because those go hand in hand. I think the advanced technology and the EVs and the hybrids. So I don't know if 10 years from now we'll see more EVs, but I know we'll see a bigger portion of hybrids for sure.
Right. Yeah. I got a lot of people answer that question. They think it's going to be hybrid. Personally, and I mentioned it on almost every podcast, I'm hoping for hydrogen. If we can figure out how to move it, store it, all the vehicles are already internal combustion. We've got all the gas station infrastructure set up. So if we can just
Sure.
figure out, and we get water comes out the tailpipe, so you're not going to get any more greener than that. So
Correct.
if we can just figure out how to properly move it, I hope we go that way. So
Yeah, and I think Honda already has a hydrogen engine in
yep,
production, so they'll be the first ones to really test the market and see where that goes. And I think your theory is spot on, and you make a good point with regards to the adaptability because that's one of the big things that they had to overcome was the adapt. How do you adapt an industry to electric and being able to refuel it, whether that be charging or whatever it might be. So I
right.
think the refueling capabilities from a hydrogen standpoint will be much easier. And but I think that momentary shift we're seeing with a bunch of V8s back out on the market,
Yep.
you might because it's what customers want and it's what they're gonna. They've realized that what customers want, they're gonna build. So I don't know how long that lasts. You might get EPA involved in trying to, change regulations again, but I think you've seen tremendous improvement even in the V8s from a fuel efficiency standpoint. So, they're paying attention to that, but you're also getting the power that you may not get from that, 8-speed 1.3 liter that is getting put into a lot of cars that are out there now.
Right, right, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So Mike, what role do you think that training and ongoing education, play in a shop's long-term success?
So I think it's the same thing as it was when my father-in-law was here as it is now. As a shop, you have to decide what is it you're going to do, what your plan's going to be, what are you going to repair, and what are you going to send away to the dealership or to another shop. And as a shop owner myself, you have to make it. I had to make that decision some time ago, and understandably, my father-in-law was retiring, so the investment in technology wasn't a priority for him. So that was one of the things that we had to do, and the industry's changed as far as the access to information. We're seeing a lot of AI-driven software out there that's helping service writers write their repair orders a lot quicker. We're
Hmm.
not quite there yet with technicians just because of the cost associated with it. So until an AI software company out there has a lot of money to buy the access to that information from a repair side of things, I think that's going to be inhibited for a little bit. But
Okay.
right now, most of the AI software companies that I know that are out there are their focus is on the front end. How quickly can I build that estimate and call that customer and give them the information about their repair to be able to alleviate a lot of that time that's spent building each individual estimate on a repair order. So, but you know, my per my personal belief was or choice was that we were going to make the investment in training like we did for EV and
Hmm.
for technology. So that's tooling, buying the right tooling, buying the right uh, it, um, computers to be able to talk to the cars and be able to do the things that you need to do in order to diagnose the vehicles themselves. And making the investment in training itself.
Hmm.
We have a requirement here as far as training that they have to do 40 hours of training a year. And
Okay. Wow. Required.
what and if they don't, there's an impact to their compensation. So, but with that being said, training is so readily available now as far as online. There's some really good training programs
Yep.
online. And there's also a lot of local training that's available too. There's conferences and so on that you can go to that benefit the technicians as well. But a lot of that training that's available to them is definitely something that we're paying attention to all the time. So much so that I think you're seeing more or certain types of shops that want to make that investment in technology or recognizing that they have to do training.
Hmm.
So you'll see those same shops at these training classes over and over again. So those are the shops that have made the decision that, yeah, we see the opportunity there and we see the need for invest in training in our technicians as they come in. So we're willing to make that investment. ASE is still going to be there, and
Sure.
most of my employees, if they come in, they're lacking, a lot of the ASE certifications that they need in order to become a master. So my goal is to get that out of the way quickly as possible. So I actually schedule their training twice a year for ASCs. So I have all their logins and we go on, find out what they're going to take, and we register them twice a year so that they can get through that quicker because it didn't quite work before, trusting them to do it and follow the process. So let's get that out of the way. Let's make it a goal and something that they can achieve, so that they came here and they became a master when they weren't before, and be proud of that fact and be able to say that that's something that my employer did for me, from that standpoint. So
Mike, every shop, we hear about culture, so when when you took over the shop, was there a shift in the culture? Did you just maintain the culture that was there, or was there anything that you did specifically to drive a different culture?
so a lot of the staffing stayed the same. A lot of the
Okay.
processes stayed the same initially. Like I didn't make any dramatic changes probably for at least a year or two. So, but a lot of the same culture changed. So I went from being a coworker to being the owner, and so that relationship changed almost immediately.
Right.
And understandably, it didn't matter who was in this particular role. I knew that was going to change. So,
Right.
um, you know, the the culture that we have here is based on the communication that we have with one another. And I can tell you that the staff that are successful here, are the ones that communicate with one another and aren't competing with one another, and are trying to be successful as a shop for one another, not necessarily just with the goal of the shop making more money or being successful, but with one another being successful. So if technicians go to training, not everybody's going to go to the same training class, but if one or two of them go, I look for them to come back and share what they've learned in the training, when they come back. And then when those cars come in, and it's not the car that, maybe they don't have that particular car that they're working on, they're more than willing to go help those technicians with the information that they gained, from the standpoint of diagnosing it correctly or doing the repair itself. So having a workforce that's willing to step aside from what they're doing, and share the knowledge that they have is something that has made us successful, so that I don't have to be a part of that on a regular basis. It doesn't mean that I'm not helping them, but it's my responsibility to make sure that they have the right tools and the right training in order to be successful, instead of just going out there and assigning a job to them that they have never done before.
Right.
So that support from my end is what has made them successful in what they're doing. And I have seen, as I've hired more technicians, I have seen that difference between the techs that I have here and those techs that I onboard that say that they've done everything before or they're capable of doing everything, and then come here and have a reality check,
Oh.
and say, hey, maybe they really haven't had that success, or maybe they haven't had that training or those opportunities that they've said before. So those situations come up, and it's not that I don't expect them, but it's how you respond to it and whether or not you give them the opportunity to be successful and make mistakes. And putting those jobs in front of them and saying, hey, here's how you do it. Here's the tools to do it. Here's a technician that's done it before, and setting them up to be able to say that they've taken on something that they've never done before.
Mhm.
So which with technology changing all the time, those problems aren't going to go away. So you're going to continue to see new things all the time. So even the guys that have been with me for 10 years, they're still seeing new opportunities that come up to do repairs that they haven't done before.
Hmm. So speaking of hiring techs, that's one of the and when I ask a lot of shop owners, what's your biggest challenge? They say it's some shops, it's hiring techs. Do you have any insights into finding, hiring, and retaining good technicians?
I don't have a crystal ball. A lot of what I use, I've used by trial and error, and it's the same thing that a lot of other shops, have told me they've done before themselves. Obviously, it's really difficult to recruit that A tech, that superstar, because they have no reason to leave where they're at. So you're trying to recruit somebody that maybe is looking for a change because of one reason or another at their current employer, and what you offer to them might be different than what they're currently getting at their shop now. And values change as we grow older, and values change as we go from one shop to a next to realize what's important to us. So making sure that what you offer to the technicians is different and superior than what the guy down the street might offer. But I think the biggest thing that you can do is, obviously you never stop looking. You're always looking. You're always maintaining the communications with potential hires that might be out there that you run across. Always taking advantage of every opportunity you have to at least pass your card along to anyone who says they're a technician. Making friends with every tool truck driver that's out there so that they know what type of shop you have, so that when that tech is looking, they make the recommendation for you. There is no recruiting company out there that I've tried so far that has the ability to fill these positions any differently than what a lot of us are doing now. They're trying to do the same thing that we're doing as far as trying to reach out to those techs that are, maybe on Indeed, and they're looking and trying to maintain that communication and find them the right shop. So I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is that you can't stop looking, even if you have full staff. It's the same thing goes in hand with marketing. You can't stop advertising, even if you're booked 3 weeks out. Those are the things that you have to continue to do. And you have to continue to circle back with those potential candidates that are out there, so that when the need arises, it's easier to fulfill them. So I'd say in the last year or so, I've seen more candidates applying than I have in the, prior to that. Prior to that, I would post an ad, and pay to post an ad, and I get 0 responses for weeks on end. Now we're starting to get some responses, maybe not necessarily qualified responses, but you're seeing some people that aren't happy with wherever they're at and see an opportunity to possibly go somewhere else. And the paid drive a lot of that, yeah, probably. But you want to think that what you offer to your potential candidates is going to be better than what they could get somewhere else other than just pay.
Right. And that's where culture comes in, because a lot of, one of people, they just want to pace one part of it, but if it's less stress, more fun type work environment, they're a lot more likely to stay around for a lot longer. Have you ever had a
Correct.
tech to show up at your door and say, "Are you hiring?"
Of course.
I already knew the answer to that.
Yeah, and I've never not stopped what I was doing to at least have a conversation with them.
Hmm.
And my staff up front know that as well. Somebody comes in, they'll hand them an application. It's while they're filling out the application, they'll come in the back or find me and say, "Hey, I got so and so up front filling out an app. Said he's a tech." So I'll either sit down next to him in the lobby if I don't have a whole lot of time, or I'll bring him in the office and spend 5 minutes with him to see if there's any potential there and where we can take it from there. Because I don't want to miss out on an opportunity that might be there. So
Yep. I've just had other owners tell me that with good culture, they've actually had people come to them. "I heard this was a good place to work," or, or whatever. So I kind of already figured that you actually had some people just come and say, "Are you hiring?" Because
yeah, and
they already know your shop. And
correct. And we've been here for a really long time and been in the area for a really long time. So
Mhm.
if the tech is nearby or we're on an expressway, they drive by the shop every single day on their way to their own shop. A lot of those things will bring people in, into the area, and sometimes the advertising does as well.
Right. So there's no shop that's going to survive without managing finances well. So any good advice on how to manage and take care of the finances? Uh,
It goes back to the coach. Like, you got to have a coach, and then
right.
you got to have an accountant that meets your needs. Accountants,
Okay.
you know, You can have accountants that just do paperwork all day and that's all they do, reconcile your books, or do your payroll or whatever it is that you're looking for. But if you're looking for that guidance, that accountant is the first one that's going to help you to be able to get your books in order, to be able to better understand what it is that you're trying to achieve. And one of the that's one of the first things that I did when I took a coach was, I had an accountant before, and really all they did for me was just reconcile my books, an extra checks and balances. I was already doing all the journal entries and the payroll myself within QuickBooks.
Right.
So they kind of just made sure that, filed the quarterly reports and made sure everything was in check. So to be successful, we're constantly looking at these numbers, not just what's on the front end with the operating software, but also what's in the back end in our bank, to make sure that we're being successful with how we're spending our money. So,
Right.
So I'm looking for an accountant that's going to help me be best prepared to be able to have that information, stay on top of that. Yes, taxes are always beneficial if they can help you from the standpoint of saving from a tax standpoint, and making sure that the reporting information that you have available is what you're looking for. And there's tons of accountants out there. The industry specific ones, but kind of understand it a little bit better. But you don't necessarily have to have an industry specific accountant as long as he or she is doing what you need them to do to be successful.
Okay. All right. Well, last but not least, being the owner of a shop is not a 9 to 5 job. Any thoughts or advice on work-life integration?
You have to trust your staff. You have to trust that they're going to do the right thing. You have to know that you've put processes and procedures in place in order to achieve that. And you have to let them fail in order for that to happen. So you have to be prepared for that. And I think the longer I've been in this industry and been doing this, I've realized mistakes happen. It's how we respond to those mistakes when they happen and how we prevent them from happening again in the future. And those processes and procedures are why you create those in the first place, to avoid those from happening again. If we're not doing something to prevent it from happening again, then that's our own fault, because it's just going to continue to happen. So, but again, the biggest hurdle for me professionally was getting to that point. I think that a lot of shop owners do, and that's trusting your employees to do the right thing. And once you get through that obstacle, and once you've trained your own staff to do the same thing and delegate, have your managers delegate appropriately, they're going to be happy. They're not going to be as stressed. You're going to be able to do what you need to do with your family, and be able to get away from the shop and not be constantly tied to it.
Awesome. All right, Mike, we really appreciate your time today, and thanks for the advice. All right, let me go ahead.
For additional automotive resources and exclusive content, follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch all our episodes. Thanks again for joining us in the driver's seat, and we'll see you next time for another thrilling episode of Top Shop.